For our next session on restaurant concepts creating magic, we have Mr. Stefan Breg, Managing Partner, Keane Consult and Create as the moderator. Mr. Breg takes the lead on strategic F&B consulting, master planning and concept development for Keane Studios in UK, Dubai, Bangkok and Riyadh. Mr. Breg has over 300 F&B concepts to his name and brought brands such as Buddha Bar and HICSA to the Middle East. Joining him on stage are Mr. Christian Gradnitzer, Vice President, International Business Development and Operations, Rikas Hospitality Group, Ms. Panchali Mahendra, CEO, Atelier House Hospitality, Mr. Peter Joehnk, Founding Partner, Joy Design, Mr. Rohit Sachdev, Founder and CEO, Soho Hospitality, and Mr. Zorawar Kalra, Founder and MD, Massive Restaurants. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much, and good morning. It's what we in the business call the F&B exodus. When F&B comes on the agenda, guaranteed to release space in the room. Anyway, we're going to kick on. You heard on day one, Manav say that F&B is strategic to your business, and yet the exodus continues. I've seen reports from Bain, McKinsey, that argue this point about whether F&B is that important to hotels, right? You better believe it is, and I think it's more important than it ever has. Most of you will have had breakfast, you'll have had in-room dining, you'll have had banqueting, events in this hotel. That will shape your perception of the JW Marriott. I guarantee that. And Ronan, who runs this hotel, he knows that F&B shapes his perception of his hotel and shapes his P&L in a big way. There are so many ways that F&B can delight and disappoint. And so that's why today we have this panel with me. We're going to focus on one subject, because we could talk about many things, right? We're going to talk about outsourcing, third parties, which is an element of how you can approach F&B in hotels. And I have a fabulous panel with me. I don't think the organizers could have pulled together a better panel than this with a mixed use, there's a habit, a mixed level of experience from operating restaurants in hotels and operating freestanding as well. And the guy in the shirt is, of course, the designer, and we're desperate to hear his perspective as well. My first question is to Panchali on my right. If you don't know who this is, I'm a bit surprised. India is an extraordinary success here. Manav really talked about it. He's a shareholder. He really talked about it on day one. But Panchali, I'm going to ask you, you operate restaurants, freestanding, and in hotels. What's the difference, and what have you learned from it? What are your experiences? And with the deals that you have with your hotel landlord, what would you change if you did a deal tomorrow?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, what an honor to be a part of this stalwart panel, and some of these gentlemen that I have looked upon and to be speaking along I'm very grateful. So we have been, most of my restaurants across are all standalone. I think one of the first restaurants that we did, and I entered India last year, and the new market was to open a restaurant called Inja in a hotel, which is at the Manor at the New Delhi, in New Delhi. I think what was different for me, it was a whole different outlook. Manor as a hotel or as a location was chosen. I didn't see at that time whether it's a hotel or we have to enter into a standalone. The primary reason was that it housed one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. It was the place for Indian Accent. So I knew when Indian Accent moved out from there 5 years back, it was a tried and tested location and a position. And I thought if I did a concept like Inja, which is, of course, it's experimental because it's the world's first Indian-Japanese concept, fine dining, I would want to be in a location like the Manor or the hotel because A, the location, like I said, was tried and tested. Second, sometimes hotels have their black book. They're able to provide the kind of clientele, the kind of expats that we were looking at to capture first than the local market. It provided me with that. And I think that is one of the reasons why we entered the hotel. Now, I think the difference sometimes between, and I feel now between operating or managing a hotel restaurant versus a standalone is is the decentralization as a standalone that I have to do decision making. Because a lot of times what happens is you are sometimes stuck with the standard operating procedures of hotels, their decision makings, and in a hotel industry, it's so fast tracked, it's so fast paced that you have to take decisions on the go. The trends are changing. So sometimes being a part of the hotel or managing it, you have to take decisions and speak to a lot of hierarchy of management in hotels. So
You feel
sometimes
it's a partnership? You feel it's a genuine partnership with your hotel landlord?
it has its pros and cons, I will be honest with you, but I think mostly it depends whether you are a management contract or you are a standalone. In my case right now, I'm a standalone restaurant, so I have my decision making on my own. When you go in a partnership, then of course, there is still a lot of hierarchical, decision making, question answers back and forth that goes around it.
So there's an agreement. What would you change? What bugs you about your current agreement that you wish you'd spent more time discussing?
I mean, right now, there is nothing that really bugs me. As a restaurateur, yes, sometimes I want to be flexible in my own decision making, is what I'm saying. What sometimes comes in between is a lot of, Q&A and a lot of, I would like to say, a little bit of interference in how you want to run the restaurants. Because I think the dynamics are changing. You cannot put the same asset as running a hotel or running an individual, very different concept of a restaurant at the same level. So I would allow the third-party operators sometimes, or even if you're in a management contract, for them to run because they are the subject matter experts. Let them handle it, let them take the decisions, let them do it, and that is what their job entails.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to hear from Zorawar. Made an excellent point to me about third party before, about leases versus management contract. But Rohit's next, forgive me. Rohit, above 11, spectacular success, which I know very well, in Soho 11 in Bangkok. Tell us about your experiences as a third-party operator.
Yeah, so we launched Above 11, a Peruvian-Japanese restaurant in Bangkok in 2012, and it's a 10-year-old brand. And we've recently, a year ago, franchised Above 11 in Dubai. So we have a relationship where we're the franchisor, the developer is the franchisee, and we have Marriott as the operator. And the one thing I really learned about that relationship, and it's gone really well, we've won 4 awards in the last year. We're the highest performing F&B outlet at the property at the West Palm Beach, Dubai. And the one thing I learned about that relationship is that it's really not about the contracts. You have the contracts which define the underlying responsibilities of each of the parties, but I really think it's about looking beyond the contract. For example, in my contract, it said that I was going to visit X number of times, and I went more, above and beyond that to ensure the success of that, project, because it was our first one in the region. So that's really important. And then the second thing I learned is really, as a franchisor, we only have so much control. We come in there, we bring our brand, our F&B concept, our mixology programming, our training, but at the end of the day, we go away because we're still there, but we're not handling the day-to-day responsibilities of the outlet. And I think what we learned was that, to have a great team on the ground is really, really crucial to making sure that we can hand over that responsibility to the operator and ensure success. So, we have an amazing marketing team switched on the ground who are responsible for, activating the brand because, we're finding that infatuations with brands are leading to entitlements much faster. So activation is super important. And then, we have a great manager, a great chef, and a great GM who is, taking responsibility. And it's a great relationship. And I think when we went to Dubai, we went there with curiosity. We wanted to learn. And I think, and I don't have any reasons to admit this, Dubai made our brand better. The expectations in Dubai in terms of service standards, I mean, it's above and beyond anywhere else in the world. And I think we went there to learn. And we not only survived, but we thrived.
So Rohit, I'm realizing now that of the panelists here, I think you're the only franchisor here, because you've got leases, management contract, leases, Christian? I think so, yes. Man, you're the only one with a franchise. So you took a risk. Above 11, built equity, brand equity in Bangkok, incredibly well known. You then signed one deal with Marriott or Marriott's owner, right? And you've now then given them the name. Heck of a risk, right, for such a big place. Were you confident they'd deliver? No offense, Marriott.
I think the learning I got from it, and now we've signed 2 additional deals in the Red Sea development. We're going in a Hyatt property with 2 more of our brands. I think the important is now that when we go back and leverage lessons learned, when we look back at our contracts, we want to make sure that we have more say and accountability in terms of who are the people going to manage the brand on the ground. That's the one thing I learned.
The marketing piece? Or?
Yeah, the marketing piece.
Right.
So before we always said, oh, we want to have control over the hiring of the chef, the hiring of the manager, but now we're putting in the other clause that we want more involvement and accountability in terms of who's going to do the activation.
Yeah, I've got one last question before Zorawar. Who does the GM think he works for? You or the Marriott GM? Oh, now then. Who do you hope he
The
thinks he
GM
works
doesn't
for?
work for me. I wish he did.
Right.
But I mean, that's where I think it's really about how good are you in relationship management. If you're going to, always have to, I think a great relationship, you have the contract, you put it in the drawer, lock it up, and you never bring it out again. And I think that it's also about sometimes understanding that it is a tripartite relationship, right? That creates its own set of risks. 3 is a crowd, right? 2 is already a problem, 3 is a crowd. But I think that it's really about making sure that there's a good relationship and open communications. And I'm very proud that I have that with Marriott. In fact, Tony Capuano is dining at Above 11 Dubai tonight. I'm very proud that the CEO's decided to dine at our restaurant.
Wow.
And I hope he's going to say he wants 10 more of these, and hopefully one of them will be in India.
Well done. Zorawar, you're itching to come in. Massive restaurants, fabulous heritage. Your father built a wonderful legacy in many ways, which you've taken forward. So you're in hotels as well. Tell us about your learning points from hotels and their management agreements, right?
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Great to be here on this incredible stage with such incredible people. So my father obviously has been with the hotel business, so to speak, for decades, his entire life, barring the first restaurant I opened using his name very proudly on the door. Everything else was in hotels. So he's worked with all the major chains, all the major operators in India, and some overseas as well. We love working in hotels. We absolutely love working in hotels. We have, kind of like what Rohan has, we have a quasi-franchise structure. So it's a very high touch point franchise system where we come with our brand, we come with our know-how, we come with our chefs and everything else, but we also have a very high amount of points where we're involved in the operations. So you could say it's a quasi-franchise / operating contract.
Right, so they're paying a license fee as well as a management fee, presumably. You don't have to answer that.
No, we don't take it on rent at the moment. We've tried that model as well. In fact, at one wonderful hotel here in Bangalore, we took a place on rent. We ran it for 2.5 years. There were certain challenges we faced, without getting into specifics, which made me realize that perhaps as an external operator, now I have restaurants within India and one overseas as well in a 7-star property at the Fairmont Raffles in Doha in Qatar. We have a masala library there. And I find that this quasi-franchise system works better because the P&L of the hotel and the P&L of the restaurant is aligned. What you don't want to be when you enter a hotel ecosystem, firstly, you need to understand as a third-party operator that you're a guest in that hotel. It's a house. You've taken a room in the house. You don't own the house. So the access to that room is also through the lobby of the house. So in that sense, the sense of that I'm bigger than the brand that I'm operating in is not the right way to think about it. So this structure works well. The sales that the restaurant does are all part of the P&L of the hotel. And as a result, there's complete alignment. And there is you could very easily say that there is a greater alignment than if you came on board as a tenant. Now, this is a very popular phenomenon happening around the world because hotels have figured out that F&B, although a very important part of this ecosystem now. I think most of the hotels in India are touching the 50% or even higher mark for F&B, especially the really high-performing ones. It's always good to have third-party operators that are specialists, especially in things like nightlife or specialty cuisines like Indian. If you want to open an Indian restaurant in Doha, Qatar, it would be easier to get a third-party operator who's a specialist than to try to do it yourself. So I love the fact that hotels offer this incredible habitat, this organized real estate that perhaps sometimes you don't get at the high street. You don't perhaps want to open a high-end brand in a mall, but a hotel ticks all the boxes. And as a result, for us, this beautiful synergy that we've been able to build with many of the people are at this conference, we found that it's a beautiful system, especially if you're coming on board as a franchisor / management contract operator. So it has to be like a hybrid. We have certain checks and balances, but the P&L is aligned. So the GM will never work for you. Let's be very clear on that. The GM will always work for the brand, and that's loyalty, and I think that's expected. For example, if I were to hire a restaurant manager, I would not want them to work for the landlord. No. I would want the restaurant manager to be...
And you said to me in the lobby, before we came on, that you're not competing against the other concepts. You feel like you're one of the same team.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's where the challenges cease to exist, because you're part of the ecosystem. You're not competing. You're adding value to the owner's P&L and the hotel's P&L.
Yeah, so I'll say a credit to the GM of that hotel, because as Panchali said, you're a specialist and he's letting you do your job, which is a fantastic thing. And a lot of hotel GMs would find that uncomfortable to having that kind of resource within the building. Christian Gradnitzer from Rikas, who's running some fabulous properties around the world. I was surprised by how many properties you have. Twiggy's a personal favorite of mine. Now, you crossed the fence grotesquely from corporate F&B with Hilton to operations and running brands now, right? So you can give us a really interesting perspective on the relationship, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody, obviously, for being here. I think it's an incredible event, and I really want to highlight it was music in my ears, classical music in my ears yesterday morning, as Manav started with food and beverage. I think it's attending many conferences between ownership, developers, and operators. Food and beverage keeps always coming up within its great side, but it also disappears very quickly. And I think we, as Rikas Restaurant Group, we are a Dubai-based, Dubai-grown restaurant group, started in 2015 with the first concept called La Cantine de Faubourg, which was a concept which Rizwan Kazim brought from Paris, the owner, the CEO of our group. And fast forward, we have developed ourselves 9 years later to be, I would say, one of the regional and into the perspective of global leaders of restaurants, nightlife, and beach clubs. We hold at the moment 16 different concepts, spans around totally different concepts, and I think I really want to touch base a little bit on the core values of any F&B venue, and it could be a simple coffee shop, it could be a patisserie, it could be whatever we do, and our core focus point is really interior, sensual creation within the space. And I actually quite enjoyed what Alan said earlier from the Hilton Group. Yes, you might have a Waldorf Astoria brand, which obviously drives a certain brand value, but you will adapt to the spaces. So, especially in our focus as well with international expansion across the globe, very aggressive. Where I said 16 concepts, we have 23 in operation, and I have got a pipeline of a good 18, 19, but we are still a family business. We have a lot of emotions. But the next one really is the team, building a culture within each of those brands and concepts, which you commit to go forward. Music and entertainment, I think, is another very key element to us. It's activations. And then food and beverage, not to forget, of course, consistency, achieving. And I think that's a big challenge. We do all face, within our experiences in restaurants, to achieve consistency. So we are definitely known for not being overall fusioned up, but being very clear to be recognized. And then a very important part these days, and I think we see that in developments throughout real estate of commercial, is affiliation with great international brand partners from a non-food and beverage sector. And then, of course, location and a thing. However, all of it said is now within all the different deal structures, and I will shortly touch base the model we have. The most important is partnership. And I think we have only come that far through ultimately gaining partnership with landlords, owners in our leased estate. We have a big area of management agreements with the brands created by us, the brands under our umbrella. And is that partnership to be truly to what you say? There's one side to put it on a piece of paper and do so. And really to the models, and I think I've got some extremely good examples. And I'm talking generic real estate. It doesn't always need to be hotel restaurants. Is within spaces which ultimately populate. But what we see within food and beverage and what we do, the first one is example, La Cantine de Faubourg, where it all started, in a very prominent hotel, which has ultimately raised the repositioning of the hotel, and the ownership has given us the trust to, you do your food and beverage, that's what you're good in. We don't have much of, call it bureaucracy or way to go on making decisions. We quite swiftly move. And we actually brought a lot of activation to that space within that hotel, which ultimately has led to open 3 other venues, but under a freestanding philosophy. Beach Club. We are in a town in the side of Dubai with the Park Hyatt. On the other side of Dubai, which we know, where everybody has been always very much saying, as soon as you cross the river, the creek, it won't work. Again, sticking to the principles of what we do, we've actually raised, and I won't mention any numbers at this stage, but we have done very clear understanding and studies. Again, the repositioning of the hotel customers with driving that beach club called Twiggy, a Twiggy family alongside, but equally had a great impact on the ADR and the sales buttons from a business hotel, which has certainly now evolved into a business to leisure hotel, 7 days a week. They have created a golf course element around, and I would say Twiggy, the beach club in itself, has done a lot of great.
Strategic to the business, and we couldn't emphasize it enough. I need to know one thing, just when you were talking there. Kempinski Hotel on Mall of the Emirates, Sheikh Zayed Road, famously had some rather underperforming F&B brands within a hotel. How did you convince them when there's 30 other restaurants in the mall and there's Sheraton on the other end? How did you convince them to build 2 more restaurants in a tennis court, Christian? Were you there at that point? You can take credit for it.
I think,
extraordinary
again,
thing.
and it's a good question. I think it really leads back to our culture, the way who we are, where ownership actually starts approaching us. And I have those requests multiple times. And that location is a good example. The space we've created, a concept in a tennis court, which was on the first floor behind the building at Mall of the Emirates Kempinski Hotel. Not a pretty space in any way. But when we create concepts, and I've mentioned before interior, I've mentioned really sensual space creation, we don't just go into boxes and build the space out and put a logo on the door or a brand on the door. For us, the whole journey is extremely important. And I think how we convince them is quite simple, is the proof is in the pudding, and the partnerships built on each other based on your delivery.
Are they leases or management contracts?
Sorry?
Are they leases or management contracts?
They are a very interesting mix. It's not a lease, it's not a management.
Who paid the capital?
It's ultimately the ownership has been very much convinced within all our other conceptual directions to be heavily involved.
That means they paid the capital, didn't they? I know that
So
answer.
it is definitely a good one. And in the same location, a second restaurant
you're smiling.
called Xu, Cantonese Chinese. Again, very strongly focused on environment. Average stay of customers and consumers is around 2.5 hours. Comes into a life from 10:30 at night, so the entertainment element comes in, light, the finishing. So, and that paired with a great team and simple food and beverage, I mean, what's better? And I think that partnership in either way,
Absolutely.
whatever we do, all our business is built on this,
Thank you,
if you're in
Christian.
food and beverage or not. And I think really that's the future, and that's a culture like every other
The
organization.
guy in the shirt is itching to say something. Peter, running a very successful design firm, we wanted to ask you about the design process, because you've been in this game quite a while now. You've sat in many workshops and concepts and schematic and detailed design reviews and all the works with hotel groups. What can you tell these guys who might well be leading those sessions and certainly paying for them? What would you tell them to improve the process and ultimately improve the end product? What would you change?
First of all, as the man with the shirt, I have to admit that I'm a bit jealous about your trousers.
Yeah, they might fit.
But I couldn't do both. So,
let's swap.
So, on the process of designing, actually, it's much easier for a designer if we would be able to understand what our client really wants. And the sad thing is, I don't want to hurt any client, but the sad thing is most of the clients might not really know what they want. At least they do not give clear briefs. And the bigger the groups are, the more people are involved, the more opinions you have. And that makes our life rather difficult, I have to say. So it's for us, it's sometimes we try this way, we try that way, and we try this, and finally somebody agrees, but it's just by accident. We would prefer much more if there is a consultant on top of a kitchen planner, actually. That's what sometimes the owners give us as consultants. I mean a real consultant who thinks with the mind of the later guest to do something, not from the back of house, just functionality. If we would have such brief, we could immediately create character, which makes F&B outlets worth and more valuable, because the emotional thing that F&B has is created by the very distinct character and different appearance of the restaurant.
So does that person, the consultant, make your life easier, or is it someone you can blame when it doesn't work out?
Easier is probably easier is the wrong word. Too many restaurant concepts just happen by accident. And if there would have been a clear picture, who are the guests, what would I want to serve them, how will my service look like, then you of course know which is the atmosphere that packages the whole thing. And I like to be named as a package designer because really we bring together the F&B concepts, the food, the service, the whatever, even the stationery, to in the end to create that unique, how do you say, Erlebnis? You are good in German, Erlebnis.
Experience. Rohit's going to jump in. Go ahead, Rohit.
I actually had a point. I'm a designer as well. And the message to owners is that restaurant experience curation is not interior design.
It is also.
There's a lot. What I'm trying to say is this. Allow me to finish. Restaurant experience curation is about interior design, branding, uniforms, tabletops, food, beverage, cocktail programming.
Okay, this moment I agree.
And music. There was a research done that said playing the right kind of music by design would drive your revenues up by 10%. So what we need is restaurant experience curation by design, where every single element is researched, planned, and executed by professionals by design. And you don't go there and start having the employees turn on the lights like it's a stadium, because it's not. And if we can create experience by design where all those elements are articulated, that's where when the customer walks in, that experience touches upon his emotional sensibility,
and you deliver,
and you deliver a wow.
I'll go back to the shirt. Let me reframe that question in many ways. Designers could be replaced by AI, right? But is what Rohit's saying that unless you've got a human describing the experience strategy, giving it to a human who then translates that into a design, AI doesn't replace you or us? What's your thoughts?
Very generally spoken, as a designer, of course, I believe interior design is the most important. But
I agree.
But I agree with you. It's only part of a whole package. And this emotional package, and that's why probably hotel brands are a bit more difficult. They just have employees who do the F&B service, whereas in a privately, maybe freestanding restaurant, you have a chef who might come out and say hello. You might have a service guy or even the owner who knows the guests, who says hello. This personal touch can be brought in by a branding concept, by interior design also. This experience really is something we want to create, and we want to think with the head of the guest. What would he expect, and what would even go beyond his expectations? We don't design for our own sake. How my living room looks like would be probably different from a restaurant.
Thank you,
but I
Peter.
hope we all agree, and again, I bossed it out, and I think we have so many different emotional connections to many different things. But ultimately, I think, again, as you started rightly, Peter, earlier, is you got to have an owner who has the vision of where we want to achieve. You got to have a controller who drives that vision. And I think that is most properly, and I have come from a hotel world, from a restaurant world. I personally have been a chef for 22 years, from an operator, and I've been very lucky at the right positions, at the right time, at the right spaces. Sorry, that's most probably where I've been emotional on it, but it requires that owner and driver of the greater vision within the space. And
to hear more from
that is what calls it, because if you put, and this is the challenge, I think, in the larger organizations, where you've got there's a good saying, too many chefs spoil the soup, correct?
Sure.
And too many opinions. You know, I like orange, you like blue, you like funky
colours.
shirts, you like dotted pants, is really holding this. And I think in our food and beverage world, it's key.
I want to hear from Panchali. It's a
No,
bunch of
I'm
guys
just
talking about
adding
design,
on to them, and I
right?
think it's very important on a practical world when we say that all these components and deliverables have to come together. But it is so important for owners or anybody who's driving the concept that they also engage all the third parties together, because there are times when it's a different branding company, they have a whole different direction, then the interior design has a whole different direction, then your OSD and tableware that you're doing is a whole different direction. And then when you put everything together, the design looks different, the branding is out of place, the plateware is different, and all that you have is a symphony of multicolored, branded look and feel that is happening, and that is a mismatch. So what I always like to do and believe is if you have a different design company, a different branding company, a different tableware company, at least bring them together, have the same brief going on. Don't have different dances, 3 different dancers, coming and dancing together. It's a mismatch.
We're running out of time, so I want to leave time for questions. We've got one more question to the group, and I want to make sure that we have questions from the floor, if you don't mind. Panchali, you've recently been promoted. Congratulations. Very well deserved, of course. But hey, you just got another job offer, to be VP of F&B at Marriott, Hilton, take your choice. Tomorrow, running thousands of restaurants, what would you change? Because you're the expert. What would you change in their restaurants tomorrow?
I mean, already one thing that Christian is doing, is space utilization in certain areas, especially in hotels. Or, when even Manav spoke about it yesterday, is you took a tennis court and made it into this fabulous restaurant. You take different pantry levels, back-end areas. There's a restaurant in Dubai which took a parking slot and made it into a restaurant. So I think one thing that I need to understand is there any wasted space in a hotel? How can I convert that space utilization into a revenue generation? I think what we need to go ahead and we as a company do is, I think the VPs or the operations head need to start thinking of the new trends and not follow trends. Within our company, we have tried doing all different concepts, whether it's the world's first Indian-Japanese, whether it's 11 Woodfire that has a Michelin star, it's Woodfire Immersive. I'm about to open the first modern Emirati restaurant in Dubai. We have a modern French restaurant. So the people behind it, they need to change, is to start thinking what are the new trends right now. We want to do a modern, for India, I would start encouraging people to start thinking of regional cuisines and regional states that have not been given that value. I'm trying to do a modern Andhra cuisine. So that's something very,
How
very
would you
important.
change their behavior tomorrow? Would you say go eat out more often, read the trade press, talk to people? They're pulling shifts. That's the central challenge with hotels, isn't it?
Just do something new, do something trendy. Just going back to it, and I want to send this to Peter as well, I think even for hotels, I really would urge and request people not to have your restaurants as an extension of your lobby. I need to see if I am going in this particular restaurant. For example, let's say the Manor, it's a very boutique, quaint 10-room restaurant in this beautiful location with trees. And then you go in, and then you go on the backside, then you have my restaurant, Inja, which has blue ceilings and green wall and opulence all over. And you would never expect such a quirky restaurant to be there. So what I want people to do is start thinking of quirkiness and changing the mood as you go towards or go in a space and do something new and something unique. And of course, space utilization.
So you're challenging the brand, who may insist that it all looks like that, and the architect, who also insists it looks like that.
Correct.
Interesting. Zorawar, we want to hear from you.
Pick up on
What
your-
would you, so you got this fancy job that Panchali's turned the job down. So now you've got the job as VP of F&B, loads of restaurants. What would you change tomorrow?
You're obviously giving me not a large amount of time to change things. You're saying tomorrow, so you're talking about 24 hours, and Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, what I would start doing, I think there needs a DNA level change in the way of the thinking of some of the biggest operators in the world, that F&B is equally important. If you look at some of the most successful hotels in the world now, F&B is crossing 50% overall turnover, so it's making more money than the rooms. So why is it that it is still given a step-brotherly treatment? I think it's important for the GMs, owners, operators, the wonderful brands and the wonderful people that run these wonderful brands that exist today in this convention to realize that in the next 24 hours, if I were given the job of Rajiv Menon, for example, to run the largest hotel chain in the world, I would try and incorporate a DNA level change and a cultural change in the way that the mindset of the operator functions. I think F&B is absolutely crucial to the success of a hotel. I think in some of the hotels in Dubai, for example, the revenue generated from the restaurants would be 3/4 or 2/3 of the overall revenue. So I would incorporate a system of getting them to realize that this is very, very important. It's important for the bottom line. I would also then do another thing as a hotel GM or a vice president. I would try and retain and acquire some of the best talent. I think what's happening is there's a hemorrhaging of the best talent from the hotels. Initially, when I started my business about 15 years ago, I used to find it very hard to poach people away from hotels. They would not come. They were comfortable. They were getting low pay. I'm not saying that they pay low now. And 15 years ago, they were getting low pay, but they would not leave. They would not leave because of sense of security, a sense of unity, a sense of being part of a big brand. That has completely changed. I don't think the best chefs now work in hotels. I think they work for independent operators. I think hotels are finding it hard to show them the larger picture. I also think hotels are not able to attract the best talent anymore because they're not able to show a clear-cut career path. So from the hotel's perspective, I would try and acquire the best people. I would try and retain the best people. Most importantly, I'll develop a very clear career path and show them they are part of a larger picture. F&B is extremely important. What you're doing is important. You're as important as the guy who runs the rooms. And I think the F&B change will happen.
That's a great point.
That would also mean that operators like me would have a lesser play in the hotels, so I should not give too much information away. So I'll stop there. But I think I would do that in 24 hours. That's all I could do.
It's a great thing because it's easier to achieve in a hotel, the career path, to lay it out than perhaps in a freestanding restaurant. You've got far more options, one would imagine. Rohit, what would you change?
So post-pandemic, I would move from creating beautiful spaces to driving yield to the owner's balance sheet. That's what the focus should be, because owners have been burned previously. It's plug and play when it comes to rooms. It's plug and pray when it comes to F&B. And so we need to create alignment to drive yield to their balance sheets. So now my answer to your question is this. I would create a separate F&B organization. I would bring an independent restaurant operating CEO, like one of the guys who are here on the panel, to run that organization. I would acquire some brands from a company like Soho. Sorry, I'm not for sale, but I would acquire some brands. I would create some brands. I would run that as a separate restaurant, independent P&L driven entity within the hospitality overarching brands. And I would start licensing or placing those brands within some of those hotels as independent entities. I would separate the F&B from the hotel.
Man, that's
and
a
run
busy
it,
day, isn't it?
run it
That's a busy
independently.
day. And of course, we have to pray that the person you're reporting to buys into all of that or has the budget, which Christian's done the job, isn't always the case. Christian, what would you change? You've
Yeah,
changed.
I think I really connect with Rohit, and actually, Rohit, you've taken some words out of my mouth, so that's very much there. I think it's absolutely correct. I think F&B is a very fast-moving space. It's a very emotional space. We've heard a lot about it. Is a space where you got to make decisions quite quickly. Yes, you can plan and you have it in your thing, but it's about your market. What can you change tomorrow? And I think it's, if you're an owner of an existing hotel, real estate, mixed use, where it is, I think and you have that challenge. And I know there are plenty of owners, developers, people behind it who have the challenge. Number one, what Rohit said, but I think what's most important is to take a pause, step back, take the emotion, the personal emotions of myself, and even have that discussion with the owner of that or the CEO and say, what do we really need? What is really our market? You don't always need to load up a great property or building with amazing F&B and great brands, because we love to dine in them when we travel, when we see them in other cities, we want to be affiliated. It might not fit. So building a journey which is relevant to the space, and I think you should do that with a long-term thought, because that will help you to position your tenants in offices, in commercial spaces, and your hotel consumers, and affiliate really. And I think restaurant groups like Rikas Restaurant Group as itself, groups like us haven't existed 15 years ago. I think we've seen that trend in the States. We have been born through one restaurant, like the hotel companies today have, who come with the story of 120 years old, and this was the founder, and so on. You keep all seeing and hearing it. Based on this, you obviously find the trust. And I think the restaurant space is very, very small, because we bring more than just food and beverage to the space. And the last one really I want to table is, I think we always got very stuck with the breakfast component, the brand standard of the breakfast component, and I have 500 rooms and I have a conference center, I need a space of 400-seater restaurant, which is just for breakfast. That's underutilized real estate. So I think it's again connecting your space back. Now, you don't need to have a destination, and I think this is, many times we as human beings live on egos. I would love to be in London, just to say I'm in London. But I've got my mind back on this a year and a half ago, where I said, it's not the right time. If I have enough money to do that, just to please myself and sleep maybe better, I still sleep extremely well. But I think what I really want to focus on is focusing on the core, what is needed, what is the market, and speak to the experts. And I encourage everybody, please, don't get into long 6 months discussions, because opinions start changing and everything keeps moving. You got to move. Every piece of business is a risk, but I think restaurant is a beautiful one, because you can be very proud. And we do all eat 3 times a day. I'm 6 times a day, so I'm a bit different.
Thank you, Christian.
add-
Panchali, one quick one, and then I'll pass back to Peter, if I may.
Before we
Go
go
ahead.
to Peter, you know what I would really like? I would like one space that can be converted into 3 different restaurants at the same time. It's breakfast, the walls change, the ceiling changes, the table changes, it becomes a lunch space. And the same thing happens with the whole lighting. And again, it's a whole change of paneling and everything else, and becomes a dinner place. So I wanted to do that, something like that. So one space, 3 different concepts. Breakfast done, lunch done, and then dinner.
Difficult to create magic, as the title of our discussion is, in a huge space like this, which you might need for breakfast, and then at the same time serve an intimate dinner, which is with a nice atmosphere. It's hard, not impossible, but very difficult. And actually, that's a problem that we will face more and more in India also. In Europe, definitely we have it, because space is expensive, building costs are expensive, so most of even the luxurious hotels just have one restaurant, and that has to change. And the characters, that was the beginning of what I started with. You need to have a different character. And to bring a character in by just styling, by loose pieces after the breakfast is possible, but difficult. So I prefer not
But I
to.
like what you said, as I've seen it, and I challenge it as well. It's a curation. Our business is like a movie production. You're curating a journey. And I've actually seen restaurants in Amsterdam who are not high-end. You won't get a Michelin star with that, very clear. But they've exactly achieved that.
They're telling a story, right? They're telling
It's
a narrative.
incredible.
Yeah, of course.
And it was through folding walls down, bringing the room into smaller space. I have a concept called Mimikakushi, 50 best restaurants, MENA, and 50 best bars globally, number 39 spot. It's a restaurant which you don't see, you don't feel, has 120 seats, and through very intelligent design, light setups and everything, I can put it down to 60, and I will never feel it. You as a consumer will never feel it. And this is where, again, it goes back to working with a vision and bringing all those components nicely together.
Okay, guys, I'm taking questions from the floor now. Go ahead, please.
I want to
Zorawar.
add something to what Peter and Christian have just said. I think if you spoke to us like literally 15 years ago, and you spoke to us about the importance of design, design would have perhaps been third on a totem pole of importance for a restaurant. I think today, with the success of some of the restaurants that Christian runs in Dubai and some of the most beautiful and most commercially successful restaurants in the world, you realize the design is actually more important.
It is.
than
I
perhaps
started
even
with
the food
design,
that you
correct?
serve. And I don't want to take names because there are some very, very successful restaurants whose food I don't like, whose overall offering maybe I don't like, but I love the vibe. I love the ambience. And I think design is a lot about vibe.
Guys, I
Through
want
your
to move off
efforts-
design, which will upset you, but I'm sorry, I need to go that way. These are some great questions, but I'm going to kind of distill that out into one heck of a question for Panchali, and that is, you heard Sebastian Bazin yesterday, who blew my mind. What an incredible speaker from Accor. And he said yesterday, don't sign 500 deals. And he's so right. So India, where should it aim? You and I have had a discussion for Saudi. Where should it aim? Should it aim to be as good as Dubai? Of course it should be, right? Should it aim to be London, Paris, New York? India, where are its aspirations now, and where do you think it should go? 10 years.
I think for me especially, I have entered the India market. We entered last year at a great time. It is now, I think, becoming an epicenter from where we have restaurants in Dubai, we have in Saudi. I feel the market somehow in these areas are kind of getting saturated, and India being this populous country and this large country has so much to offer. There are a lot of natural resources available for restaurateurs to come in and play around with different concepts. I think in the next 10 years, you will see an evolution of a lot of homegrown great concepts that people are going to do it. There are a lot of experiential dining that I can already see that is happening, where somebody is opening a restaurant up in the hills called Nar. Somebody is doing a 12-seater experiential in Bombay. Zorawar is opening some amazing restaurants. I think you're also moving away from the little Indian aspect to, curating and doing different cuisines. So I think now the India market is great. What was phenomenal for me to see last year was to have residency and pop-ups of legendary chefs, like whether it was Gagan or Massimo Bottura, who's coming again. Heston came in. So I think the India market is now finally opening up to experimenting and experiencing great concepts. I'm very happy with India, the way it has been received now. Initial times when we opened up, we got a little backlash for it, but I think what it is going ahead is there'll be a lot more cuisines being accepted in the country, apart from just the Indian cuisine being
We'll show
a local
research
favorite.
later on, if I may. We've researched 500 people in the last week across the 4 major cities, and their highest level of interest, international brands, followed by local brands, international chefs, way down the list. Zorawar, Indian national, you're active here. How many years before India gets in the Premier League? I'm being polite, but real Premier League of dining globally. How long is it going to take?
I think from an India perspective, it's arguably the most complex ecosystem that exists in the F&B world worldwide. I don't think India should look eastwards. I don't think India should look westwards. I think India should look inwards. I think the concepts that will dominate the Indian landscape will be ones that are bespoke, built, and curated for the Indian dynamic. And the Indian dining dynamic and the Indian dining paradigm is very different from what you'd guess in the rest of the world. You have the extremely wealthy and the thoroughly impoverished all living side by side. You look at the Four Seasons, one of my favorite hotels in Bombay, you're looking at the air bar, and below that you see the slums. So you have this dichotomy in India, which makes us very unique. Do I believe in the difference in pay scales? No, not at all. I believe there should be more equality, but it's going to take time for that to change. So the dining concepts and the dining landscape has to reflect the people. And as a result, I don't think India should be bothered about what the West is necessarily doing. We can learn from the mistakes. You don't need to necessarily care what Singapore is doing. Singaporeans eat out 3 times a day. Indians, the best of us, eat out 3 times a week. By 2030, we'll have the largest urban consumer base in the world. So we'll have to build concepts that are curated, bespoke for those people.
So you've got the raw materials, it sounds like. You've got the talent, you've got the scale. It's just a matter of time, right, before you slowly catch up with everyone else. I'm going to sum up, if you don't mind, guys, as time runs out. Sorry? Oh, well, okay. We can't hear you. There's no microphones, my friend.
We need a mic over here, if
There's
possible.
no mics. There's no mics.
Go,
Which do you, okay, got it. Which do you prefer, to rent or to
I think
management contract?
one size doesn't fit all. We rent.
Yeah.
We have spaces in 3 hotels in which we have leased the spaces, put in the capex, and we are operating those premises. We have management deals and we have franchise deals. So I think it's about positioning, it's about the opportunity, it's about the site, it's about the location, it's about the potential of the captive market within where that hotel resides. And all of those things we look at very carefully before we make those decisions.
There's no one answer to
sometimes
that.
I cannot be a subject matter expert of all the different countries. So, for example, I know as being an Indian, I enter India market, I understand. So I'm leasing it out, I'll put in my money. I have leased out some of my restaurants, franchised them out in Saudi Arabia. I'm not a subject matter expert. I got help from the hotel. So we do it. So I correctly said that it all depends on different areas and different countries.
So it's bespoke is the answer to that. And you and I are opening in Saudi with this year, inshallah. And it's a management contract. That's the right deal. I think that's the right thing that we're both doing.
We are together doing the NEOM, the Sindala project together. We have multiple restaurants and yacht club that we are doing. We are doing a management contract in there. We're learning about it. So it's a whole different master plan. So
but also you can't ignore and think just leasing out is good. You as an owner, developer, you believe it's an A+ location and you're expecting a certain level of income, which is a safe net, correct? Protected through agreements. We have developed as restaurant creators and operators a view very clearly as well, if it's actually an A+ or maybe not. So you might actually get stuck and end up with a concept which might not fit to your overall development. So I think it's really, again, building that mix up. But lease is always of an option, of course, with the right partnership.
Guys, our time's up, so I'm not going to sum up because we've kind of run out, but what I will say is there's F&B workshops, presentations this afternoon. Please come to them. And I reflected this morning when I woke up in my hotel room, that room has not changed in 50 years. 50 years ago, the TV remote came in, right? I look around my room, nothing. There's a pillow menu. Rooms have not changed. Look what's happened in the last 5 years in F&B. The pandemic, cloud kitchens, AI, robot kitchens, vegan, new world food. F&B is moving fast. Keep on top of it.
And don't
Rooms
forget the
are standing
aggregators
still.
of delivery services within cities and everything else. I think we've seen that race as well, and we've seen international brands, power brands on restaurants who certainly do delivery service, which you could have never imagined. So there's a lot happening, there's energy.
So join us this afternoon, please. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.